Welcome back to BLOCKTV. It's time now for Trader's Take, and with Bitcoin seeming to be back in a channel stuck around this $8,500 mark, we turn to our technical analyst in New York, Joe Saz, to help us break down what's happening here. Joe, are we seeing a repeat of what we saw around that 10,000 mark? Are we just stuck in this channel for now, or is this simply a holding pattern before something big takes off?
Definitely good questions. All right, I want to start with the first part here because I feel like we've now broken the image of the previous breakdown from the descending triangle in November 14th, 2018. So I think we're definitely looking at something new. Are we channeling? I think it might appear that way. Let's pull up let's run through the charts and get to the daily because I think I'll better be able to describe what's going on. We're opening up here on Coinbase. Volume is pathetic right now. This is crazy. It was 12,000 just a couple days ago. And we'll look at what happened a couple days ago. But right now, we have a little bit of stacked sell-side liquidity, stacked buy-side liquidity. And this is actually something that I've been telling a lot of my other viewers. This is a really humongous issue that happened with Coinbase. There was some sort of glitch in their system, and they were down for a while. I think it eliminated all of the conditional orders in the book. So you can see a little glimpse into the future here. We have massive support at the 2,500 range. And we have a good bit of resistance in the low 12,000 range. This is a glitch that you really don't get very often. I'm talking, this is something that's like a golden egg when you can get something like this. You can see some resistance here on the depth chart at 9,000, resistance in the low 12 to mid 12K, maybe something at 10K, but you can really only see the biggest support area mounting in the 2,500 area. Everything else is kind of, stacked on top of each other. And here you can see where it goes vertical, there's a ton more support. And same concept over here where it goes a bit more vertical than staggered. So this is something really interesting. We're going to have to pay attention to how this plays out over the next month.
Wait, but Joe, before we move on from that, I want to understand, what's the implication there? I mean, am I to assume that means that there's a risk of us running down to 2.5? I mean, what's the sort of the real life implication here?
Yeah, this tells us that there's sleepers, okay? There's dynamic and static traders. There's people that throw an order in the book, they put a limit buy, they put a limit sell, and then they just sleep on it. They don't care. They just know that Bitcoin will hit that price eventually, and they're comfortable with that order at that point in time whenever it is. So what we see here is after these books were wiped clean, this was basically two flat lines. It was like a straight up line and then a flat line. So as liquidity was added to the order book, we got this really unique glimpse of where people are stacking their orders. So these are sleepers right now. And yes, Bitcoin could easily even flash crash that low. I'm assuming that Coinbase Pro or, an exchange of this caliber would probably have some sort of mechanism to prevent something like that. Although it's happened in other exchanges and even Coinbase with something like Ethereum a while back. I know me and Dan Hedl was talking about it. But anyways, so what this it describes is that basically what you said is kind of, we're just going to go over it again. There's it's very rare you get something like this, but we see there is definitely support at 2,500. Can we get there? Yes. When we get there, I now know that I'm going to expect a bounce at the if we hold this area, I'm expecting a bounce for sure. If we shred through it, that's a completely different story. But I know that buyers are stacked at 2,500, very interested in buying the same way that I know sellers are stacked in the high 8Ks. And they're stacked again a little bit at 10K, and they're definitely stacked in the low 12Ks. So we definitely have some upside opposition and areas that I'm expecting a bounce more likely this 12K. And we saw what happened at 9K, 8,800. So let's just hit the 15-minute before we move on to the daily and go over that and how we can bring that information over to the daily chart. But here we are. We kind of broke like a small trend, and even more importantly, we had this crazy shoot. This is everyone that was convinced the bottom was in. We made a higher local high at 77.50 range and started pumping out, pretty clean, started descending into it, but then we got shaken out. A lot of people got shaken out in this move, and even worse, a lot of volume to justify it. So there are definitely a lot of sellers in the books. So I think this is actually in some ways organic. There was tons and tons of resistance in the books because, people were thinking we're going lower.
Now, Joe, can I pause you for a second? Because I'm looking at that chart there and I'm seeing what I believe. Now, I'm no technical analyst myself, but that looks like a Bart Simpson formation to me. Is that, would that be forming a correct Bart Simpson head right there? Is that what we call that one?
Yeah, Asher, I'd actually need to seek your counsel there. I mean, you're calling out some patterns that are very
Well,
advanced.
Joe, I've learned from the best. The teacher may, the student may become the master, but please continue.
Yeah, so we definitely have a huge part here. We didn't retrace. I mean, in the single candle dump, we didn't retrace completely, which was really interesting. So what I was saying is, I think a lot of bulls were convinced that the bottom was in at this confirmed higher low at 77.50 relative to 77.01. Actually, at 77.12 and then 77.01 or something like that, reported by Coinbase. We pump up, we get vertical, go sideways and down, kind of fluctuate. We did revisit this wick space a couple times, which was pretty bullish to me. And obviously it paid out. And then, right after, like this was a crazy shorting opportunity. We flashed all the way down. And since then, we've pretty much been trending down, had a little bit of a relief bounce, trended up for a little bit, made our way back into, close to 8,500. But before pulling down, we're kind of below this like micro trend, and we're now it's kind of acting as resistance. I'm not paying too close attention to something like this, but I did think it was important to scatter the bullish momentum. And now you saw the book; it's looking like we're stacked for the bears a little bit, and I think we're probably headed to 8,100 or so pretty soon. And so that's going to affect a lot about what's going on here. This is what caused it all, right? This was we were looking very bullish, pumped up 5% back to back, near back to back days. Obviously, there's one in between, but we broke down from the descending triangle. It's faked out a lot of bears, pumped out of it, and it looked like we were going to be closing above the 200. We fought again, and then the third day we were, we were shredding through it, and then bam, we just got reversed on, and that's what that candle is we were looking at on the 15 minutes. This humongous reversal here into a terrible downside move. That just broke the bulls in half. I mean, I just can't see them really getting instigated to fight much harder. I'm expecting a bit of a move down, and moving into the weekly, this has changed our weekly posture from way like a super bullish engulfing candle to on our way toward a spinning top. A kind like a not a spinning top, a bearish inverted hammer type scenario, similar to what we have here. But it would take a lot of price action for this to get red. So I think we're going to look, a little less bullish moving into next week. Obviously it's Sunday. We have a bit of time before the daily candle closes and thus the weekly candle. But either way, I think we're moving in after that steep reversal at the 200-day moving average. I'm far less bullish than I otherwise would have been. I was ready to have to switch and go long into $9,400 territory and potentially higher. But that rejection at the 200, especially after we were really taking off, that really shows you that that the bears are in control. And I've been saying that for quite some time. The bulls did scare me a little bit, especially after those couple pumps. But I'm glad I stuck to my guns for now.
Now, Joe, I want to ask you as well before we head off, take a look at some alts. I want to ask as well. I mean, you touched on that point with Coinbase wiping their order books, and so we get to see this sort of natural organic redistribution of the orders being put in place. But how much weight does that have? Coinbase is but one exchange, not even close to the biggest exchange anymore by any measure. I mean, what impact can that have on the market? Do you look across different exchanges to see how different order books are laying out, or is it too much information to sort of break down, just so people can understand that a little better?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I get that question a lot, and I find that I've spent so much time with so many other exchanges and order books and monitoring price, and I remember the only real difference has been like some sort of Bitfinex anomalies. Even during peak volatility, you might see 50 to 80, maybe $100 price differences between Coinbase and all these other exchanges, BitMEX, XBT, which means that the average between the aggregation that it takes to create XBT, it means that all of them are kind of off balance because of like liquidity on each exchange and the FOMO selling or buying associated with what's going on. So I noticed that it doesn't really matter what exchange order book I'm paying attention to. They tend to have a similar behavior pattern. Mm-hmm. If one's going up, then they're all going up. If one's going down, they're all going down. And even if there's a price gap, it might not necessarily mean if for example, when we broke down from the descending triangle on Coinbase Pro, we got as low as 8,100 or maybe around there. Okay, But on something like Bybit, or I can't remember what the other exchange was, hit BTC, I can't remember. It wasn't like a shady Chinese exchange. It was pretty reliable, and their low was 7,900, and
Right.
so that was very, very terrible. The big price gap and $1,000 price area that was broken. So it was quite a bit more bearish on one exchange than it was on another. So you do get that from time to time, but I don't find that it really has an overall effect on the price as things kind of average out again.
All right, exactly. The market tends to correct itself. All right, but now moving on to take a look, because we do have to admit, I think, or you tell me, Joe, at this stage, we are seeing at least a bit of a renaissance in alts, whether that be because Bitcoin is losing some ground rather than necessarily gaining in the alts, but there has been some interesting movement and market dominance has dropped in Bitcoin over the last few days and weeks. What can you tell us, Joe? What are you seeing in the altcoin picture?
Yeah, let's take a look at that, because one thing that I'm really happy to see is Bitcoin dominance going down, and Litecoin dominance was going down. We might have had a little bit of a relief rally here. BNB moving up relative to the day or near it that Bitcoin was losing dominance. But it's kind of been fluctuating, even with some loss in dominance in Bitcoin. Ethereum seems to be the only one, or actually this is XRP, seems to be the only one taking some ground off of that. Let's take a quick look at Ethereum. I can't remember why this was deleted, and it might even show up as the same color. Yeah. So, point is, we're taking a couple steps down across the board. It seems like XRP is the only one that's really pivoted off of Bitcoin's demise. And we'll take a look at how that looks in price. But you can see Litecoin is still suffering. We're still looking ugly. We're grinding, and we're fanning out. I mean, we had a much more vertical attempt at saving the price here, and as you can see, we have a much less vertical, in other words, a much more horizontal type trend here. I wouldn't really consider this a channel, but I would say that this is a very weak bullish outlook. Not to mention we have the bearish crossover, the death cross of the intermediate and long-term moving averages. So Litecoin is looking terrible, and despite this small move in dominance, I still think that the market's going to continue to shift into Bitcoin, and altcoins are going to continue to look brave. I think it's important for us to take a quick look at ETH, and let's see, let's get their numbers reported by Coinbase Pro. Again, I like Coinbase Pro's reported numbers. I don't like them, but I believe that they are regulated, and they do the job by the book, if you know what I'm saying. So it seems like there's been, a little bit more of a steep upside trend here than Litecoin. You saw Litecoin was maybe a 25-degree angle, where this would be a 30-degree or so. So a little bit more relief, but I mean, big rejection, and we're on the eve of a bearish crossover of the intermediate long term. I think the same thing in Litecoin. Our short-term moving average, which is the 50 in this case, has crossed below the 128 and the 125 and 200. 128 is what I use for Bitcoin. It's basically the same thing. So altcoins, technically are looking ugly. I don't really think that it's possible that we'll get like a little surprise bounce here, but the worse Bitcoin does, the worse the ecosystem does. XRP has done something that I wasn't expecting. We broke up from this ascending triangle. I was actually expecting us to break down. Now, we did take a pretty steep move to the upside, near 10% move, but we did cap out, and we wicked into the bottom of our little reliable channel space here. Now, last time we did that, it was ugly. This time we're fighting to get back in. I think it's very possible that we get back into the high 28-cent range and trade here for a while. But again, I think if Bitcoin performs poorly, it doesn't matter what's going to happen. I don't think XRP hodlers have enough money to prop the price of XRP. I just don't see it happening. Traders are going to overwhelm hodlers. It's going to happen no matter what hodlers want. So yeah, I think as far as dominance is concerned, we're definitely looking at Bitcoin taking dominance. Dominance moves down, which is money leaving Bitcoin. But we're not, even though we're seeing altcoin dominance increase, we're not necessarily seeing price increase relative to US dollar. So that does tell me that money isn't really moving from Bitcoin to alts. It's still moving from Bitcoin probably mostly to fiat. And there might be a couple exceptions to that rule, but in this day and age, it's probably a lot easier to do that with all these US dollar paired exchanges. Coinbase, Bittrex, tons of them. I can't even name them all. There's a number in the US, and I don't like most of them, but or pretty much any of them. But there's a lot more off ramps, let's say, directly to fiat.
It's interesting, Joe, and I know this is a critical topic for you, so I don't want to set you off, as it were, but I will say I saw that Tether has been minting new coins over the weekend, despite the massive lawsuit that's headed their way. Signs that perhaps people are holding on to those stablecoin fiat possibilities while they're waiting to see some of the volatility issues play out in Bitcoin and other coins in the market. Without, as I say, setting you off on a tangent too much, what do you think of moves like that? Do you think it's a sign people still believe in Tether despite all the ongoing scandals?
I think it's a loud enough situation that people should at least acknowledge that they're playing with fire. 2.5 mil is small potatoes. This isn't the same thing. I've seen them do a couple 20 million packs. I feel like that could be a little bit more organic, but it might have more to do with providing exchanges with liquidity than it has to do with an actual buyer trying to wash 20 million USD and buy Bitcoin with it through some shady exchange with no AML KYC compliant regulation. I'm all okay with that. I'm just not okay with the corporation doing it for themselves to make up $1 billion that they lost as a result of getting their funds seized. So, anyways, I think these 2.5 mil prints. I think Tether is resuming its normal operations. It's going to until it can't, and that's going to require a regulatory hammer. And I think they're going to be playing a lot of stall tactics. So I think we have at least maybe even a number of months. I thought the October 14th was going to be a big day for them, but I think they're able to push this day back of when they're supposed to be submitting documents over to the New York Attorney General, and those will obviously be in an open docket and pretty widely circulated immediately. So I think that they're doing everything they can to stall, maintain their operation, and maybe try to I just try to think of all these scenarios. And the most altruistic one I can think of is keep the price decent through the halvening. That would be my best guess if there was an altruistic purpose behind it.
Yeah, well, we'll have to see how that does when that does play out, because it could be some very interesting time for the market as a whole. But in the meantime, Joe, I want to thank you so much for being with us here, and I'm going to break down this tricky market as it stands right now. A lot going on, and yet a lot still in holding patterns. Hard to pick, but we'll still be here at BLOCKTV with all the latest in news and information. So stay with us and keep watching at blocktv.com. I'm Asher Westrop Evans. Thanks for watching.
For more news and updates, follow us on Twitter.